This is One on One. We're pleased to welcome Kerry Brodie, who is founder and executive director of an organization called Emma's Torch. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
Our pleasure. How would you describe Emma's Torch?
So Emma's Torch is a nonprofit restaurant. We provide culinary training and job placement services to refugees. Really what we're about is empowering refugees to begin their own culinary careers upon graduating from our program.
Where'd you get this idea and when?
I used to work in public policy, which is a wonderful place to be working, but I'm a very impatient person. And so I found that what was meaningful for me wasn't the policy work, but were those times where I was volunteering at a local homeless shelter on my way to work and had the opportunity to talk to people about food, about their memories surrounding food, and just kind of had this idea that we could be doing more within food to really drive social change. And so I had this idea for quite a while, and I thought someone else should do it. And eventually my husband, I guess, got sick of hearing me complain about it and said, you know, why not you? The rest is history.
Was your husband involved and pushed you?
He did push me. He's always been very encouraging and supportive.
So here's the thing. I'm curious, as I was reading about the organization, I'm thinking, how exactly does this work? How does it work?
So the way it works is that our culinary students come into our program.
Based in Brooklyn.
Based in Brooklyn. We're in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn right now, and our students join us. They begin on day one learning those basics, the fundamentals.
Looking at photos while you're talking about, so go ahead.
Great. Perfect. Oh, there they are.
Go ahead.
Our students start with us. They come on day one really excited, and they're learning those basics. How do you chop an onion? How do you hold a knife?
They don't know anything?
Nothing from a commercial kitchen standpoint.
Okay.
We're really looking for people who are passionate about food, but don't necessarily have the experience of working in a restaurant.
Okay.
And when they come in, everything that they touch, everything that they work on ends up on our menu. So in many ways, when our guests come in at the end of the day, they're eating our students' homework, and it just so happens to be totally delicious.
Do they know that?
They do. We make sure that our guests know what the experience is about, because what we're offering people is the chance to say, hey, that mimosa, that avocado toast, you're changing a life. Don't you feel good about it? You know, order another mimosa.
So it does, but that's not, it sounds like a cliche, changing someone's life, but it's not a cliche. Describe the lives being changed.
We work with refugees, asylees, and survivors of human trafficking. Every student of ours has a different journey.
Describe that. I'm sorry. You go through that quickly, and people, refugees, people seeking asylum, and
survivors of human trafficking. And so if you're looking at these three categories, refugees, I think, are the ones that people most understand, people fleeing large-scale conflict. Then we look at asylum seekers. Those are people, maybe they're fleeing because they're LGBT, maybe they're fleeing because of political unrest where they've been targeted, or that they're victims of domestic abuse. And then finally, survivors of human trafficking are being brought here largely against their will and being forced into slavery. And that's a sad reality of New York City. And so what we're saying is that all of these people have something to offer, have something that they can contribute to our community and to our culture, and that we owe it to them to give them that opportunity to begin new lives and new careers.
How do you find them?
We work with a number of refugee resettlement agencies and homeless shelters who refer in their clients to our program.
I'm curious about this. It would seem to me that the people you're talking about, dealing with the kinds of challenges they've been dealing with, the crises, the personal human crises, that the question of trust, the ability to trust someone to be helpful and truly to be helpful may not be easy for some of these folks. Am I making too much of that?
No, I think what I've really had to realize is that every student who walks through our doors has been through something different, comes with different lived experiences. One of my favorite conversations during an onboarding of one of our students, they kept asking, so why do you do this? What do you get out of this? And I had to tell them
what is it?
And I said to them very bluntly, I get to spend time with you. I get to learn your recipes from home, and I get to see you thrive. And eventually, I'm going to ask you for a reservation at your fancy restaurant, so don't forget me. But I think what we all get out of this is we get to live in a more vibrant community with more delicious food and more diversity. And I don't think of it as a charity. I think about it as something that our whole community benefits from.
Do you consider yourself a political person?
Personally, yes, but I run a 501c3, which
Join the
is a
club.
non-political organization.
Yeah.
But I used to work in politics before beginning this.
Yes. The reason I'm saying that is because See, I don't know, and I'm not going to get into too deep a philosophical conversation. We run a 501c3, as is public broadcasting, right? So our views, we have to temper our views so as to not hurt our organization. That being said, I wonder if it's truly political, meaning controversial political, to take the position that as a country we have a responsibility to be open, to be welcoming, to be supportive of those who are suffering, who may have come from another place, refugees, those seeking asylum, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't seem overly controversial to me, does it to you?
No, and we actually made the decision, we're named after Emma Lazarus, whose poem's on the Statue of Liberty. And the reason for that
Could you remind folks what may be there? Not maybe there, is there. Go ahead.
The
Emma's
words
torch,
on
right?
Emma's torch say, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. And those words on that poem are still aspirational for our country. And the backstory of that poem is that it was written to raise money for the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. And it helped inspire this entire country. It inspired children to send their milk money. It inspired schools to have drives. It inspired everyday people to say, yes, that's that poem. That's what we stand for. That's what encapsulates being American. So I think in some ways it's the least controversial thing. We are at our best, at our strongest when we live up to those ideals. And that doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on.
You worry about where we are now in terms of certain people of influence and their quote-unquote attitude and position toward the folks you're talking about?
Definitely. I think something that's been interesting to observe is we're definitely watching what's happening at the national level. But every time there's something in the news that maybe runs contrary to our beliefs, that we are our strongest, we are at our greatest when we welcome in the stranger, we have more people knocking on our door asking, how can I help? What can I do? How can we do better? And I think that's something really inspiring. It's easy to watch the news and to feel downtrodden by the xenophobic.
Hey, what do I do?
You uplift people by.
No. So someone says, hey, what can I do? I can't do anything. This is a terrible situation. You say?
You can. You can choose to only be a patron of places that are welcoming and providing equitable pay to immigrants and refugees. You can donate to organizations doing work that supports refugees. And you can call and write letters to your politicians and say, hey, I'm your constituent and I believe that we have a place here for people.
30 seconds left. You got a story of a student who's done something that you say, hey, this is why I got into this in the first place?
Definitely. I think each of our students presents a beautiful story. We had a student who came to our program constantly apologizing for their level of English, very unconfident. She graduated and she was not only able to secure a job, she was able to secure a raise and move her family out of the shelter system. And I'm so proud of her and love eating where she works and seeing her thrive.
You're doing important work, and
Thank
people
you.
don't need me to tell them that. Keep doing what you're doing, and thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well done.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by United Airlines, Guarini Institute for Government and Leadership at St. Peter's University, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, New Jersey Sharing Network, University Hospital, Newark, New Jersey, Wells Fargo, and by ADP, transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.